Hey everybody, welcome to God First Everyday Podcast once again. My name is Bishop Raymond Love here, senior pastor, or I should say lead campus pastor here at Spirit-Filled Family Church. We're here with our cast and crew today, getting ready to bring you another episode of the God First Everyday Podcast. We thank you for joining in with us and coming online with us. We know it'll take a few of you guys to a time to log on with us and see what's happening, but I'm excited about today, family, because we're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects to talk about in the world, honestly, and it's hip hop music. Hip hop music and how it's affected us in our culture, how it's affected us in our lives, how it's affected us in our Christianity, in our walk with Christ, and what we do in this life. So I'm looking forward to this episode today. We thank you guys for joining us. Some of you guys are still logging on, most likely, and getting an opportunity to join us on this podcast. Make sure you log in and you subscribe. Click the subscribe button and the bell icon. Click like on the video. Of course, if you like the video, hopefully you don't dislike it, right? But if you like the video, click the like button, click subscribe, click the bell icon. That will let you know when we have another podcast coming on. You'll be informed about it on your YouTube channel as well. It'll let you know when we have a guest or what's coming up in the future. We have a lot of things that we're still working on as we build this podcast. But the wonderful thing about it is having the opportunity to come to you, to talk to you about the Word of God and the things that's happening in our community out here today. Amen. So I'm thankful to God about that, family. Again, thank you for our crew for being here and helping us out today and getting us started. And we pretty much want to get right into what we're talking about today, and that's the hip hop generation, the hip hop culture, how it has affected us in our lives. If you have any questions, please make sure you text your questions in. We want you to interact with us here on this podcast. We want to hear what your feedback is, what you think about the things we're talking about and the discussion that we're having. This is what makes this podcast what it is, right? The opportunity to talk about subjects and things that are not necessarily always talked about from our perspective, what we see, what we feel from a biblical perspective of what we see going on around us in our culture and in our communities, in our country, in the world, and how it's viewed in the eyes of God and through the scriptures. Amen. So again, thank you guys for joining us. We're going to get right into this podcast today, family, because I truly feel in my heart that I am hip hop, right? I am of the hip hop generation. I was 12, 13 years old, right? 12, 13 years old in that age when I first really got into music and the hip hop culture and the dancing and all of that stuff. And then people that are my age, I just turned 55 last year in December. I'll be 56 this year in December, and time flies, right? We've grown up in this life and in this culture. And if you ask me anything that I'd rather be listening to, if I'm driving down the street and I have only one choice of what I wanted to hear, it would be Christian hip hop music now, because that's what I listen to. And I listen to a lot of gospel. I listen to gospel, Christian, contemporary, worship music. I love it all. And honestly, I'm an eclectic person. That means somebody that likes a lot of genres of stuff. But my main focus, my main preference is hip hop music. I love it. I grew up in it. I always had a drive for it. That's what drove me to be a DJ for many years and do the stuff that I'm doing. So that's why we're going to discuss and talk about how it's affected us, how it's affecting our culture, who we are as a people, and what we're doing. Amen. So again, if you guys are out there, you're listening in, you're watching. If you're driving, that's different, right? But if you're not, if you have an opportunity, send in some questions, send in some comments. We want to get that in so that we can hear your perspective on what you feel about the things that we're talking about and what it was like for you growing up in this hip hop culture. We have, right, from my age, right, somebody who's in the mid 50s to somebody's in the 60s and somebody's and even older than that, and then to the younger generation, somebody's in their 30s and 20s, somebody's in their teens. So we want to hear from you guys. We want to hear from what you think and your perspective on this conversation that we're having. And you say, Ray, what does this have to do with God and God first every day? And that's why the podcast is here, right? God first every day and what we do. Well, what it has to do with it is that it's just part of our lives, right? It's part of what shaped us and what we're growing up. And hip hop culture is a part of our community and who we are. Even like I said, gospel hip hop. You look at my shirt right here. This is our Love Connection shirt. My wife and I, of course, are Love Connection, our rap artists. And this is our first album that we did. And this is our 20-year anniversary t-shirt that I'm wearing. But it's hip hop for me, Christian hip hop music. We made rap songs. We made rap albums. It's a part of our lives, is who we are, and it directs us in what we do. God even gave me that as a mission as I work and live and do things in this life, that he told me that because hip hop culture and it has moved through all genres of people and different cultures, from United States to Russia to Japan to China to the Philippines to Jamaica, like all over the world, hip hop culture has affected the world. And God told me that the music will be able to go through that. Christian music, rap music will be able to go through that opening that was made with hip hop music. So it's a part of all of what we're doing. So as I'm God first every day, right? And that's why this is the title of this podcast, because before we do anything every single day, we give God our first fruits. We give God first in prayer and in worship and reading his word and studying his word and knowing what God wants us to do every day. And as we're like that, and we're focused on that and those things, God will control and protect and cover and keep us, guide our steps, lead us in the right direction, help us do the things that we're supposed to do in this life. And anything that comes to my mind has to go through God first. Anything that comes in my life has to go through God first. It has increased me in my confidence in my life and what I'm doing for Christ, and the things that God sends me. I believe in my heart I won't be deceived by the things out there in this world, because I put my faith first in God before anything else. And I don't allow any social media, any TV news outlets, or anything else to infiltrate my mind on a daily basis before I seek God's face. So with that, family, we're going to go ahead and get into the discussion. And I grew up in a hip hop culture, in a hip hop generation. It's just like everything else in this world. I remember what people talked about jazz music back in the day. It was like it was underground. It was in the juke joints and back in the woods. And it wasn't that so-called mainstream, right? Well, back then it was a lot less mainstream. But when I grew up in hip hop, when I was 13 years old, hip hop music was underground. There was a late night radio station. I was in New Jersey at the time, living in New Jersey. In New York had a late night radio station, WHBI. And I used to love to tune in and listen to those DJs and cutting up scratching music and the underground hip hop stuff that was coming out back in the day. But you would hear it. They had, when my mom, when we were young, we used to go to the Brooklyn Masonic Temple out in New York. And in the Brooklyn Masonic Temple, sometimes they would have dances and stuff in the basement of the temple. And I remember guys coming in there break dancing and up rocking is what they used to call it, and body rocking and popping locking and all that stuff. Like that was the beginning of it, but it was all underground. It wasn't where you can like watch it on TV or something like that. You know, like it grew because of the culture, right? And when I moved to California, in November of 1983. When I came to California in that time, hip hop music out here was different, right? Like they had a little bit of it here, but they did not have the full spectrum of hip hop music. It was different here. They had rap artists out here. Dr. Dre and them was really like, they had K-Day music, and they had Dr. Dre and those guys on there, and different style of hip hop. Mixmaster Spade and Rappin' Duke even, right? This is before NWA and all of that. And so the hip hop culture was totally different. So much so that like when I was going to school at Chaffey High School in Ontario, I remember one time getting into a rap battle with some dudes, and I said Houdini's whole rap from their record. Nobody had heard it out here before, but I knew it backwards and forwards because it was hot on the East Coast. But I said their whole rap, and everybody was like, "Oh, he hit it," right? But I didn't know that I took that from their whole thing, but because they hadn't heard it out here yet. But that's how separate the culture was from New York City and the underground hip hop and all that stuff that was going on out there to where it was here in California. I remember how it all changed. I didn't have a lot of friends when I came from New Jersey to California. I didn't have a lot of friends. And part of the reason why, because the culture was so different. I didn't know nothing about Crips and Bloods. I didn't know nothing about like none of the gang stuff and all the things that were going on out here in Southern California. I was clueless to all of that stuff. But the culture was different. So it changed for me. Back in the day, they had this TV show called That's Incredible. Like some of us older saints will remember that show back in the day. That's Incredible. And they did a feature on hip hop and breakdancing. And it was like it changed the whole culture in Southern California. It changed my life completely because people knew I was from New Jersey. They knew I was from the East Coast. They didn't really care about me. But after that feature came on and they showed the breakers dancing, and I think Ice-T was even in that episode that they had on there. And it's like all of a sudden the shift changed, the culture changed, and it started to shift, and everybody was coming to me like, "Hey man, you from New York? You know about this stuff? You know?" I'm like, "Yeah, you know." Like, and I became popular simply because I was from New York and I knew about the culture. And you know, I couldn't break dance, I could pop lock and stuff like that. But my buddy Andre and I had just started DJing in clubs and doing stuff like that back in the day. And that's how I became like popular in my area. We started doing house parties and all of this different stuff, but the culture shifted. All of a sudden, people was wearing Adidas tennis shoes and fat laces and had the name buckle chains and name chains on, and all of this stuff that like the New York City culture, and it started to shift. And I watched it happen. You know, nightclubs were changing. They had teenage nightclubs back then. They had this place called Grand Central Station in Pomona. And, you know, they were having rap battles. I remember, if you guys know Above the Law, you heard of the rap group Above the Law that was on Ruthless Records back in the day. Hutch, known as Code 187 from Above the Law. I met him first there when we was all teenagers, man. High school, juniors, seniors in high school, rapping and rap battles and stuff like that in the Grand Central Station Teenage Nightclub. Every Tuesday night at the movie theater, it was dollar night, and they had breaking dancing battles and contests. They had break contests at clubs, and the culture started to change and shift when That's Incredible hit. And it's like now people know about this, and you started to see more hip hop and music videos. Back then, family, the music was shaped by the culture. The music that was put out was shaped by the culture. Now it has shifted and changed, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But the music was shaped by the culture. If you guys remember back in the day, the video by Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, they had a song called The Message, right? Don't push me, 'cause I'm close to the edge. I'm trying not to lose my head. That song was hot, and it was out there. Everybody knew about it. It was part of the culture again, right? But if you look at that music video, it was completely shot in the streets of New York City, in the subways, in the apartment buildings, on the street corners. It was a reflection of the culture in the music, right? But later on, as we got into the late 80s, early 90s, it started to shift when hip hop music started to go mainstream. When other groups came into the scene, and you didn't see hip hop music on MTV back then, right? You saw Michael Jackson, you saw You know, it wasn't, you didn't see hip hop music on MTV. And then, but later on, MTV Raps came into the picture, and then Dr. Dre and Ed Lover, and then again, the culture shifted. But once hip hop music hit the mainstream, and the videos started to change, and money started being put into it, that's when the music began to shape the culture. It started to shift and change how the music affected the culture rather than the culture affecting the music. Back in the day, like I said, the Grandmaster Flash song, KRS-One, right? Boogie Down Productions, all of these groups were conscious minds. They were getting the message of the community out in the music. Even NWA was getting a message of the music, right? Out, a message of the culture out into the community through the music. And it started to grow, and that started to shape how we see things and what we see in our culture and how we deal with it and how we live. But it started to shift. It started to change when it got mainstream. When record labels started to put millions of dollars into these productions, into these budgets, and music's getting played on the radio now. I remember back when I was in college, right, just out of high school. I used to DJ a lot of events in the Inland Empire. And a lot of these high schools would hire me like to do their proms and do different things. They wanted to hear the hip hop music. And I remember 99.1 back in the day. Like I don't know, even know if 99.1 is still on the air right now, right? I don't listen to secular music, but back in the day, they didn't want no hip hop music played. They undercut me a couple times. It made me so mad at Eisenhower High School and a couple different events I had set up. And then they got the radio station involved, and then they cut me out as the DJ because they like, he gonna play hip hop music, he gonna play this and that. And now, like 99.1, that's all they play. Like these radio stations now, it's the culture has changed. The thing has shifted from the underground and not being liked to it's changed, and now it's shaping our culture now. Now then, the culture is shaping the music. So, you know, I got a couple notes here. I want to make sure I'm looking at this so I stay on track. Because if I don't, you know, all of these years of stuff that I've been dealing with this will take me off into places. But now the music got to making millions of dollars. And instead of them shooting music videos in the streets and in the subways and in the alleyways or in the basketball courts, now they're shooting them in $1 million mansions and on boats and yachts. And like now it's shifted now from wanting to be from even coming from the culture of broken and underprivileged people speaking their minds and getting their music out into the culture. And so everybody could hear what's going on with them. It shifted to personal. It shifted to the music shaping the culture now, right? You got to be rich, you got to be famous, you got to have the fat chains and the gold rims and fly girls and all of this stuff. It shifted and changed, and really it hasn't really gone back. It's what it is now, and it's went so mainstream that the music is basically kind of guiding what we see and how we look today, right? And it's kind of like if you think about old NBA basketball players and old NFL, old Major League Baseball, like you hear them say like, man, we used to only make a couple $1,000s a year playing baseball. We only made a few $1,000s a year, you know, $500 a game, right? Playing basketball and football, right? Back in the days in the 60s and 70s, and even as it came into the early 80s, they didn't make a lot of money. Now, Major League Baseball players are making a couple $100 million contracts. You know, football players, quarterbacks making, you know, 12, 13, 15 million dollars. You know, the wide receivers making all of this money. The minimum pay in the NFL is like $800,000 a year. And so we see that now in the culture, how it's changed. And it's the same thing with the music generation and that genre and how stuff has changed in our culture and how it's affected us as a people and how we act, how we think, and what we do. The music has shaped how we dress. The music has shaped what we drink, what we eat. The music has shaped how we talk. Everybody was Flavor Flav for a while. Yeah, boy. And, it's bananas, yo. Like, we out here in California and dudes talking like they from New York City. I don't know if you guys remember back in the day, they had this HBO special called Gang Banging in Little Rock or something like that. And I remember watching that and thinking to myself, like, man, like these gangsters is really tough out here in Arkansas. But that was a prime example, right, of the music shaping the culture. I told you guys earlier, when I moved out here from California in from New Jersey to California in 1983, I didn't know nothing about gangbanging. I didn't know nothing about Crips and Bloods and Red and Blue, none of that stuff. I didn't know none of it. But if you go to New Jersey now, my cousins and family members even tell me, like, this Bloods and Crips and gangbanging out there, is that the culture shaping the music, or the music that shaped the culture? Same thing with gangbanging in Little Rock and all over the country and all over the place. It's the culture was shifted and changed because of the music. And that's what's happened even with us nowadays, and how stuff has happened, and how it's changed. And how it's changed us and how we think and what we do. I know how this culture thinks because I know how their minds were shaped. Why are we talking about this, Bishop? Why are we talking about hip hop music and how it's and all this stuff? Because the truth of the matter is, family, if you don't know where you came from or how you don't know how you got here, right? And you got to understand the mind behind people when you're trying to reach people of this culture and of this generation that we're trying to talk to. We think we need a new gospel, or we need no, we just need to understand who people are and how we got to be where we are, and who we are in this country and in this nation, and how we're going to reach a generation that was even more so than myself. Like I told you, I'm 55 and I'm hip hop music. I'm hip hop culture. And those that are younger than me are even more that, right? So how are we going to reach this new generation? Well, we got to know who they are. We got to know what brought them to be who they are, and how they got to be, how their minds think, how our minds think, right? What's funny to me as I think about like culture, right? A lot of people have been making fun of the person that was in Australia that was breakdancing. Like, I know everybody's probably seen this by now, and how she was squirming around on the ground. We was cracking up like she was horrible, right? A horrible breakdancer from Australia, just doing her thing, right? But in Australia, she probably hard. like you on the Olympics representing your country. To me, it's just like the United States beating up on another country, the women's basketball beating them 75-32, right? To me, that breakdancing display was the same as that, right? Like, it hasn't hit, but I bet you if they have the breakdance in the Olympics in the next 4 years, Australia will send somebody a whole lot better. I guarantee you there's a whole lot of people in Australia like mad right now because she on there breakdancing and she's the butt of every joke, right? But it's the culture, right? But I guarantee you there's some people out there in Australia that's hot, that could really break dance and get down, but I bet they'll be out there representing next time, right? But that's like an example of like how the time has not caught up with that culture and the hip hop music and being a part of it, right? So I kind of like these conversations, family, and where it's going with us and how it's going with us, and some of the things that we're going to talk about and discuss with that. And remind you, as I'm speaking and talking, please, if you got any comments or questions, type them in and ask me, so that way we can kind of like get your feedback on what we got. And as a matter of fact, I'm gonna go. Do we have anybody that's
Yes, so we do have some questions. So the Asia Approach asks first, what is your perspective on believers that also listen to secular music? Do you think it has an impact on one's walk with Christ?
Oh yeah. See, now we were getting to that, right? But we jump into it because we got that question, because that's always been my biggest fight as a man of God, right? It took me, I would say probably about 1.5 to 2 years to stop listening to secular music, other hip hop music, and 99.1 back in the day. What was it? The Beat was like the hot radio station back then. Some of you guys will know my testimony. When I first got saved, I was DJing in a nightclub, and God had took drinking and cussing and smoking away from me right away. I was delivered from that, and I was trying to play radio versions in the nightclub, right? Because God had changed my heart, and I had to even change with the other DJ in the club. Like, this was at the end of my career DJing in the world, and the guy that played in the early, right? He would play, and I would come on like 11 o'clock, and I would play in the late night, right, until 2 in the morning when the club closed. But I changed positions with him so I could play radio versions in the nightclub. That's because there was a shift in my mind thinking and understanding of how the music and the cussing and all of that stuff, right? But it affects us in our thinking in our minds, because the music now, remember I said the music has changed from the culture shaping the music to the music shaping the culture. So that's what's happening in this generation. I don't care if people don't believe it, but it's true. The music shapes the culture. It changed. Why are we in California wearing Timberland boots, right? Because people in New York City were wearing Timberland boots, and they were popular and on every TV show, and they're on the music videos. So people were doing what they saw, wearing bomber jackets and like I said, Adidas shoes with fat laces and all of this stuff, because the music was shaping the culture, and secular music shapes our culture. That's why they spend so much money and millions of dollars and budgets on these artists and this music that they do, because they know and understand that they can shape a generation, a culture, and the enemy knows that. That's why the enemy has infiltrated. The music industry, Hollywood, has always been a tool of the devil. Call it what you want, believe it what you want, whether people believe in God or not. I think that if you're saved, sanctified, and filled with the Holy Spirit, you know and understand this. You can see it and how it's always worked and how the enemy has always used this. So listen to the music nowadays. God sent me on this mission not too long ago, where I was watching BET after having watching it for years, and I was watching and listening to some of these rappers, and I was like, they trash. And then what they talking about is nothing but filth and mess and disgusting. And this is what's shaping the minds of the young people out there, because they're looking up to these people as their role models. When I was young, like I said, right, 12, 13, 15, 16, 17, my role models in music was Eric B. and Rakim, right? KRS-One, Run DMC. I used to love these hip hop dudes, man. Tribe Called Quest. MC Light, like Queen Latifah. Like, we looked up to these artists and these rap artists, LL Cool J and Big Daddy Kane, and all of them. We looked up to them, and what they wore, we wore. When Ice Cube talked about St. Ives, ain't nobody know nothing about no St. Ives beer until Ice Cube started talking about it. You know, rolling down the street, smoking Indo, sipping on gin and juice with Snoop Dogg. Now everybody from you see them with their gin and juice, right? Because they want to be like what they see. The music shaping the culture. So that's how I feel about that, the hip hop music and the secular music, and how it's affected us and how we think. I pray I answered that question. We got any others out there?
Yes, so they had asked the second one, and this one says, do you think today's music has any relation to the history of oppression and enslaved Black people?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it does, and I'm gonna put this to your point in understanding. Like, if you, all you have to do is look in the history of music, right? At general period, and especially hip hop music. Why do you think record labels always go after deprived kids, right? They always go after kids that don't have no money, that are broke, right? They have talent and they have ability and skill. They don't have a knowledge of the music industry or the business. Why do you think they go after them? Because they can get them to do what they want in order to sell music and do and to bring apart I would say bring out the message that they want to get across in the community and the culture. It's easier to get a kid who grew up with nothing and watching music videos all their life, like, you know, like I was when I was young, right? That watching these music videos, watching all these people with money and all of this stuff, and then get them to be a part of that, and then putting out what you want to put out there. So yeah, how does it, man, go with the slave mentality and the slave mindset? Because there's millions of us out there that are still growing up on AFDC and food stamps and don't have a lot, underprivileged, don't know much, lack of education and understanding. So you're going to see those people that the industry will take and give money to and blow up. All of the artists, when I was young, you'd always hear people talk about how their contracts was jacked up and they wasn't making this money. And it wasn't until later when they started getting paid properly and got paid right. Well, that's because they didn't know no better. And the music industry took advantage of their talent and their gift and their ability to make this music, make rhymes and make beats and do all of this stuff. And it took advantage of them in order to make millions of dollars off of them. So that's part of the oppression of the mindset too. Now we can put out whatever message we want through the people that we want to do it, and we can give them minimal money while doing it. So to me, if you ask me that question, that's how I look at this mindset of oppression and all of these things as related to our culture, right? So that's a good question. I hope some of you guys might weigh in on that, you know, as your thoughts on that or your comments on that or what you think about that. But you know, it affects our minds and how we think. I know how it affected me as a man, how I thought. But I didn't trust no girl I was dating because of the music I listened to, right? Because of all the music, you know, you hear about these guys taking people's girlfriends, and you know, you like your mentality is shaped by what you're listening to. And your thoughts. We got high all the time. We drank and smoked and went out to nightclubs because that's what was in the music. That was popular. That's what everybody was doing. I was a DJ. So for me, back in the 80s, you guys, in the 80s, early 90s, the DJ was like, it was like being like Michael Jackson, you know? Like I was telling you guys about Grand Central Station, the teenage nightclub. That's where I first saw groups like Ice-T came there a long time ago. LL Cool J was there once. NWA, Mixmaster Spade, King T, like some of the local groups out here in California. But that's where we saw some of these people, and you looked up to them, like you thought about them, and you wanted to be like these people. I first started DJing there as a teenager, you know, and doing different stuff. So it shaped how we think. So you got another question for me over there? I don't want to get to.
Yes, so we have one by Deborah. She asks, what is your perspective on Christians listening to and going to jazz festivals?
Jazz festivals are a little different. To me, the message is in lyrics, right? And in music. I'm even kind of a lot of jazz music is more musical, right? The message is not necessarily in the lyrics. I'm really against even R&B singers. To me, if your message in your music, like I talk about people like Beyonce, right? She's a R&B singer and in music, but her message is trash, right? So I'm not cool with that. There's a lot of Christian people, grown Christian people that go to jazz festivals. I don't have no problem with that. If I was in a restaurant and playing jazz music, I'm not going to get up and walk out or something like that. And I don't think it's bad for people to get involved with those things. But you kind of got to weigh your options of where you're at and what you're doing, because a lot of the jazz music stuff is musical. It's about the musicianship in music more so than it is about the lyrics. Now, do they have jazz singers? Yes, they do. People singing blues music? Yes, they do. People singing blues music about bad stuff and doing bad things. But again, a lot of the jazz music back in the day was the music being reflected by the culture, and not necessarily the culture shaping the music, right? And then the message being shaped by the music and what was put out there. So I don't think it's bad for people to go to festivals and jazz festivals and things like that. You have to weigh, though. You have to think about it and be in prayer about stuff like that. So you're making the proper decisions for yourself. I don't go and attend a lot of that kind of stuff from where I came from. Is there alcohol at those things? Yes, there is. If alcohol is a problem for you, then I wouldn't say doing it. Can you go to something like that and not drink? Yes, you can. You can drink soda and do different things like that. But for me personally, it's not something that I do. It's not something that I look forward to doing. And again, mainly because I'm that hip hop guy, right? Now I'm a musician as well, right? You know, I play keyboard and drums and guitar and different things. So I'm a musician as well, and I love good musicians and musicianship, right? To see guys being able to play and jazz music and stuff. So I like to see that. But I don't think there's a problem with people going to jazz music, but it's also about who's going to be there, what their message is, and what they're giving you, right? So that would be my thoughts on that. But yeah, anybody else got any other comments or not at the moment?
No more questions, just comments.
Just comments about stuff, right? But we want to kind of, family, look at things from a perspective of how it affects our walk. I'm very vocal. I don't let me put it like this. I don't hate nobody. I don't hate secular artists and music. I was once very wrapped up in secular music, and I was the guy outside the high school passing out nightclub flyers and letting everybody know about the club. I always told people I passed out flyers to 21 and over nightclubs to people at high schools, to kids at high schools, because they always wanted to go and couldn't. And they always told people about it. They always let people know, their older brothers and sisters, older uncles and cousins. You want everybody to know what's going on. You tell high school kids about it and get them hyped up about it, and they're gonna tell everybody. And that was my strategy back in the day when I started a nightclub. 18 and over or 21 and over, it didn't matter. I would still promote it to high school kids because I knew that they would let everybody know what was going on. And like the mindset, right? The mentality of the culture shaping the music, and how the music was now changing the thoughts and minds of people, and the going into clubs and doing those things. So how it affect me in my Christian walk, how when I got saved, how God changed my thoughts, right? I told you before, like I was listening to Christian hip hop music. I was a DJ for Gospel Gangsters, and from 1999 to 2002 on the road. I traveled with them and I would DJ their shows and stuff. And when I first went like to do concerts with them, I didn't know their music that well at all because I didn't listen to Christian hip hop music. And the spectrum of Christian hip hop music back then was very thin. You had like T-Bone, Gospel Gangsters, and a few other groups out there that was doing it. And now we have plenty to listen to, right? We got a whole lot of good Christian hip hop artists and music, but it took a long time, like I said, a couple years for me to just like, okay, this music is affecting my mind and my thought and my mental, so I can't listen to it anymore. That's why I don't listen to it anymore. I don't even listen to secular music, period, anymore. I still DJ weddings and stuff like that. I'll tell people, like, I'll play some cool songs like the Cupid Shuffle and stuff like that. That's simple, like where I don't feel like I'm stepping on God's toes by doing this. But there's a lot of music I won't play and can't be a part of because it's putting out the wrong message and wrong perspective. So how does that deal with us and us with God? When you're ministering to a generation of people who grew up in this culture, you have to think about who they are and what made them to be who they are. I know who I am. I know when I was 21, 22 years old, 23 years old, 24 years old, if you came talking about God to me and you attacked my beliefs and my culture, my music, what I listen to, who I call myself, what I am, then that wall's going to come up and you're not going to be able to talk to me. You're not going to be able to change what I built myself up to be and what I believe is a part of me and what I know. But the only thing that's going to help the generation of people that we're talking to now and dealing with now is love. Love is what changed my heart from the culture I grew up in and what I made myself to be. It was the love of Christ that changed me. It was not somebody telling me that what I was listening to was wrong. Nobody could tell me that. I had to come to that conclusion for myself. I remember back in the day when I first stopped listening to secular music, I was telling my wife about it. My wife was like, oh, it ain't nothing wrong with it. You know, it's all good. She was still listening to the radio. But it was like 6, 7, 8 months later, I remember her coming to me. I remember it like it was yesterday. She came to me. It's like, babe, you was right. You know, I can't really listen to that no more. It's like the message within it. You know, you got to think about back then. We're talking about Biggie was still, like, a lot of his music was still being played. Some of the R&B artists that was out back then, and Tank and Omarion and some of these other cats that might have just got started back in that time. Like, some of this stuff was hot back then, but you hear the message and what they're talking about, and that's why I don't listen to it or support it, because the regardless of what people think or say, it's not until you understand, you have an understanding of God, where you can look at this and say, it's shaping how I think, rather than the culture shaping the music. So that's the kind of the understanding of this, family. And I thank you guys for bringing forth the questions and your comments. Any comments on what anybody said out there that might be a little bit interesting that we can kind of add to our discussion?
Yes. So Larry Lacey said, example of selling your soul to the devil, because some chase the fortune and fame without knowing they are selling their souls. That was a good comment.
Yeah, that's an excellent one right there.
Ronnie just right now asked, have you ever listened to an old song and realized it had a satanic message?
Yeah. That is huge for me right now. Back in the day, I would tell you this, like we would play Prince songs backwards, right? There were certain records you play backwards and get a message out of it. Like, we used to do that back in the day when you had DJ and turntables. You can do that, right? But I listen to Michael Jackson songs now. Like, if you listen to the lyrics of Michael Jackson songs, you can see the demonic message in it. You can see demonic messages in a lot of stuff. The killing and the murder. People are actually serial killers in their music, talking about blowing people's brains out and killing people and all of this stuff. That is the music affecting the culture. Doing drive-bys and stuff. You didn't hear about drive-bys in New York City back in the day, but shooting people and I'm telling you, in New York, it was rare for people to walk around with guns. They had knives and switchblades and pipes, and I mean, even when they had gang fights. Now, we're talking about the 80s. I know it's different now, right? But like, the times changed because of the mentality of the people through the music and the message. So yeah, it was demonic. And I look back at a lot of stuff that I used to listen to. It wasn't as bad as it is nowadays. Like, now it's more in your face. But the underlying message of a lot of the music back in the day was, yeah, I could look back at some different things. Prince's music, there's some aspects to that. There's even if you go back to some of the other earlier day artists, that you can see the message in the music and the shifting of words of God and turning it around and the negativity that it came from. So yeah, there's a lot of that. On Larry's comment, there's a lot of people out here selling their soul, man. And there's I could say, honestly, I've watched a couple people personally in the music business get to that place where they had to make a decision whether they're going to sell out for this music and do what they were being asked to do in order to continue to go to that next step and make money, or whether they're going to keep their integrity. You will reach that point in life when you're in this business. You hear about that. People might think I'm crazy for saying this, but I watched at the beginning of this year, the Cat Williams video with Shannon Sharp went viral, right? Everybody was talking about what he was saying, but he said something that was kind of prophetic in that. He said, this is the year where everything's going to be exposed. He was one of the first people I heard say that this whole year. And the truth of the matter is, family, what he said is coming to pass. Like, God can use certain people in situations. It don't matter who they are. He says he's a believer, but that different people believe and they do different things. I don't negate whether the fact that he's God, because he says it. He loves Jesus, and he speaks about being on God's side or the devil's side. It's one or the other. But then he drinks, smokes, and cusses. So that's his lifestyle. You do what you do, right? Christ came and died for every sin. So I don't judge him on that. But I hear the message that was spoke, and what he said about God exposing people in this year is true, because God gave me that in a different perspective, where everything the devil is doing now is in clear and plain view. There are kids out there talking about being rap artists and selling their soul to the devil. There's people out there. This one kid, I don't know who the dude is. Everybody knows him as a rapper and he's famous, but he's always got Lamborghinis and money in the trunk of his car, riding around, being hard and doing all of this stuff. And I'm like, who is this dude? And then, you hear him talking about one time on a social media, talking about he sold his soul to the devil. There was other dudes out there, man. And you hear about these rappers getting killed and all of this different stuff, and they're giving themselves away to this industry, to trying to be famous. This is nothing new, family. This is what the devil has done from the very beginning, from the very start. The devil was out here trying to get people drawn in to fame. What got the devil cast out of heaven, right? And separated from God, was trying to exalt himself above God. And that's what his whole mission is for the people that God created, is to get them to follow that same pattern and exalt themselves above God, to seek the fame and the fortune. And the devil's message is always the same. You want to know if something's good for you to do or to listen to? Kill, steal, and destroy. Steal, kill, and destroy. That's the enemy's message. And when you hear that in the music, you hear that in the songs, then you got to get away from that stuff and stop listening to it. So any other comments from anybody else out there, you guys, that we could add to this conversation? We got quite a bit of text out there. Glad you guys are watching in and listening.
Right. Helen said, there are underlying messages in the music today, very much so. I hear young people say they are just words. Words have meanings to them. They cannot be ignored. Deborah Washington also said, yes, the demons and devils are right in the open, especially with music, commercials, and video games.
Yeah.
Those are two good ones.
Video games is a whole nother subject too, right? Because the music's in the video games. What's that one that they got the cars that they drive? What's the name of that? But yeah, words have meanings, right? That's why when you talked about like the jazz festival, I'm not too tripping about that, because it's more musical than it is about lyrics. There are jazz singers and stuff like that with wrong messages, but again, you got to be mindful of stuff like that. But the things that are spoken, people are saying, oh, it's just music, it's just this and that. Listen, it shaped the way we dressed, it shaped the way we thought, it shaped the way we think and do things. It shaped the makeup that you wear, right? The clothes that you wear. I remember back in the day we were on BET. Whenever we did a show where we were on TV, I've been on Motown Live back in the day with Montel Jordan used to have that show that he hosted. Michael Collier used to host BET Live. We were on that TV show, different talk shows and stuff. Whenever we went on them shows, there was also always clothing designers outside with their clothing lines, begging that you would wear what they wanted. Like you could pick out whatever you want and keep it, and as long as you wore it on TV. If you wore it on TV, why do they do that? Because they want everybody to see what you're wearing. When they go to the like the Oscars and the Grammys and the Stellar Awards, right? And all these different well televised things, they want you to wear their clothing design so that everybody can see you wearing it, because they know the influence that you have on the minds of people out there. So yeah, the lyrics have influence, the words have influence, and things that you speak. We're singing songs and stuff and chanting things that people are saying, and we didn't know about it. Like I was talking when I was a kid and younger, watching Michael Jackson. I never thought nothing about him running around with these little kids and kids sitting on his lap and hanging out with him and stuff. I didn't think bad about nothing like that. Nowadays, I look back at it and like, man, why wasn't it, the people in saying more about this and talking to this man about the image he's projecting, but we didn't look at it that way. But the culture has changed. Now we see and know better and understand better. I don't care about talking about it and speaking about it. People may think I'm wrong or talking about somebody in that aspect, but no, I see what I see and know what I know. And there's a whole lot of stuff that came out later, right, about what he was doing with these young boys. And now these young boys are grown men, and they had careers and stuff because they were brought up through him and dealt with him and the stuff that they went through with him. So this world that we live in, family, we got to keep our eyes open to what God is doing, and that's why it's so important. That's why this is the name of this podcast. That's why I speak it and talk about it every single day, and I pray people start to get it in their heads. It's not enough that you know God, and that's the first step in our lives in becoming Christians. But then we have to give God our first. It's got to be God first every day. It's got to be God in all of our things. So we're not confused by this stuff. So things of this world and what's going on around us and the music that we listen to, and what we're doing in our lives is not shaped by the world, but is shaped by God. And that we're not confused or deceived by the things we see out there. Amen. So if we don't have any more questions, fam, we're going to get ready to wrap this up, because I'm just like this is, I could talk about this subject for a long time, but I want to get to the meat of like what's going on in our culture, what we see out here, and the truth of it. Amen. And how it's affecting us in our daily lives. I gave a little bit of the history of myself growing up in this culture and what's going on out here. We talked about some of that stuff, because if we don't know where we came from or how we got here, then it's more difficult to deal with where we're going and how we as Christians are going to affect or change a generation that's coming up behind us. I hear pastors say we need a new gospel for this new generation. No, we don't. We just need the love of Christ, and the love of Christ will overcome all of this stuff. It's what saved me. It's what changed my mind. The young people that I have working with me here in this podcast, they see things differently, and it's not because they needed a new gospel. They just needed the love of Jesus, and they have a lot of the same views that I have as young men and women of God, because they understand God, and now that they're away from that stuff, they can kind of see what's going on within the culture within it. The tattoos that we have on our bodies, the music that we listen to, the piercings that we get, the way we talk and how we think and what we do, it's all shaped by what we hear and what we see. That's why the Bible tells us that your eyes and your ears are the gates, the windows to your soul. And that's why you have to be careful of what messages you're listening to. I'm careful. I don't like, watching these secular TV shows, secular movies. God was speaking to my heart just earlier this year and late last year about how a lot of these movies now, you look at the people who are the stars in these movies, like let's just say John Wick, right? John Wick was a murderer and a killer for hire. and you find yourself cheering for him while he's killing a whole lot of people. Yes, the people he were killing are murderers too, right? But it's like, think of the aspect of that change, right? You're championing for somebody that's out there killing people. Um, it's crazy how the mentality, and even in the video games, I think it was Helen or Deborah that was talking about that on the chat. But in the video games, the killing and all of that stuff that goes on. Grand Theft Auto, that was the name of the video game I was thinking about. But how they jack people for their cars and shoot people and all this stuff, and then the music that's in it, right? You don't think that it's conditioning your mind and how you think towards this stuff, then you're not fully taking in the perspective of what God is telling us to do. So as Christians, brothers and sisters out there, and those of us that are watching God and watching God move in our culture and watching our culture affect us in our communities. That's why we see stuff like what happened in the opening ceremonies of the Olympics and the mocking God and all that stuff. I'm grateful to the Christian brothers and sisters in Christ that stood up and they still talked about Jesus and how God helped them to get where they are. Everybody's preaching. Everybody's talking about who they are and what they're doing. Why should we as Christians be any different? And why do we think the devil's trying to keep our mouth shut? Because the truth about Jesus is what's going to change people's hearts. Christ is the only way to get to God. Jesus said it himself, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through Jesus. The Bible tells us that Jesus created all things and everything, and nothing was created that wasn't created through Christ. So the message that needs to be mocked and changed and defunct is the true message of God. That's why the enemy, you don't see nobody mocking Buddha. You don't see nobody mocking Muhammad. You don't see nobody mocking Jehovah's Witnesses. You don't see nobody mocking Mormons, right? You don't see nobody mocking these other religions. Why is that? Because the one that's going to change a man's heart, right? The one that's going to shift your thinking and how you look at things is the word of Jesus Christ. That's why it has to be met with full force from Satan, because the devil knows what the real is. And those that follow the devil need to follow his message, and they need to change the word of God. So I pray you enjoy this episode, family, of God First Everyday Podcast. We like to bring these messages to you. If nobody else is going to talk about these things, we're going to talk about them. And I want to get your perspective on it. I appreciate the people that were joining in and sending in text messages. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you are watching this, maybe you're watching this weeks later and you're watching this episode, click that subscribe button. We need to get to those subscribers that we can start to get this message out to more people. Click the like button. Click the bell icon so it will let you know when we have a new a podcast coming out, right? And we're doing new stuff. So make sure you're following us with that. Click subscribe, click like, and then tell somebody about what we're doing here. And hopefully you can join us live. That way we can get that feedback from you and hear what you're thinking about the topics that we're discussing and some of the special guests that we have on the podcast. Again, my name is Bishop Raymond Love. I'm here at Spirit-Filled Family Church. You guys want to join us here in our ministry? We're here every Sunday. We're in Hesperia, 9980 Hesperia Road in Hesperia. We have Sunday services at 10:30 a.m., Wednesday night services at 7 p.m. Bags of Blessings, where we give away free groceries every Saturday. The Spirit Closet, we give away free clothes to people in the community. If you know somebody's in need that's hungry or they need clothes, make sure you tell them to come to Spirit-Filled Family Church. We'll be happy to supply them with what God blesses us with to bless the community. You can also catch me on 93.5 radio station, 93.5 FM in the high desert area, New Vision 360 radio. Tune in Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. and 8:30 a.m. for the Freshwater radio broadcast, where you can hear the preach word of God right out of the sanctuary here at Spirit-Filled Family Church. And you can hear us here on the God First Everyday podcast. We love you out there. Thanks again to our cast and crew and everybody for joining us. Thank you for everybody that was sending in the messages and listening in and your comments. We appreciate that. That inspires us to be able to talk to you about what you think and what's going on in our community. God first every day, people. God first every day in everything you do. And I promise you, God will continue to bless you, cover you, and keep you. Until we see you next time, God bless you. And thank you for joining us on the God First Everyday podcast.